All right, could we have Ms. McCabe, please?
And I'll remind you, you're still under oath.
All right, Mr. Lally, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Ron. Now, Ms. McCabe, if I could take you back just to a little bit from where we had left off. When you arrived at the residence at 34 Fairview Road, you pulled into the driveway, is that correct?
I believe so.
And obviously, on that date, you were familiar with the types of vehicles that your parents drove?
Yes.
And did you see any of your parents' vehicles at the home when you pulled in and parked in the driveway?
No.
And when you got to the house at any point, did you exit the car or go inside the house?
No.
So you texted him that you were there, and you stayed in the car, and he came out.
Yes.
And when Colin came out to the car, what, if any, observations did you make of him in regards to his sobriety, as far as what, if any, observations did you make in respect to that?
Normal.
Didn't seem overly intoxicated to you?
No.
And as far as his face or features, or from whatever you could see, what, if any, injuries did you observe on Colin when he came out?
None.
And how would you describe his demeanor when he came out and he got into the car?
Normal.
Now, during the course, you drove from the Fairview home to Colin's house, is that right?
Yes.
And where was Colin living at that point?
I don't know the address, but his new house, not the one where he was neighbors with John, the newer house.
And if you could, just generally speaking, where was that in relation to the town of Canton? What was it?
It's in the center of town, close to the library.
And do you recall, or do you know what type of residence that is?
Yes, it's like the condos. I'm not sure exactly, but yeah. Townhouses.
As far as your drive from the residence in Fairview to Colin's house, did you make any stops along the way?
No.
About how long a drive is it from Fairview to Colin's new house?
7 minutes, 5 minutes.
And when you arrived there, what did you observe Colin do?
Got out of the car, went inside, got the key, locked it, went inside.
And is that something as far as, did you wait for him to get inside?
Yes.
And why was it?
I always wait for him because it's like how he has to open the first door to get inside. So I usually just wait for everyone to get inside.
And during the car ride from Fairview to Colin's house, do you recall anything specific about, did you have a conversation with him?
Probably. I don't remember what we were talking about.
And then following that, where did you go?
I believe home.
And when you got home, were either of your parents home at that point?
No.
Do you know about what time it was that you got?
Not exactly. I would estimate a little bit before 12:30, around that time.
And at any point in time over the rest of the course of that evening, did you see your parents? Did you talk to your parents or anything like that?
I know I talked to my dad on the phone when we found the dog. Other than that, no.
And so after your return home, when you went to bed or you went to sleep, were your parents home at that point?
No.
About how much time was it between the time when you got home, around 12:30 or so, and when you went to sleep?
Not long. I don't know.
Now, turning your attention to the following day, at some point you woke up, correct?
Yes.
And were your parents home at that point?
Yes.
And were both of your parents home at that point?
Yes.
Do you know about what time it was that you woke up the next morning?
No, I do not.
Now, Ms. McCabe, at some point, in August of 2023, did you have occasion to meet with some troopers from the state police?
Yes, I believe I'm not sure what time, but on a Zoom.
And was that one trooper or more than one trooper or something?
I believe 2. I'm not sure.
Can you recall any of the names of any of those troopers?
Yuri maybe was one of them. I'm not sure.
I'm sorry, just gonna wait for that. And now, ma'am, following that meeting that you had with troopers from the state police, what, if anything, did you provide to them from your phone?
Text messages with Colin, maybe pictures. I don't know. Definitely the text messages.
And before we get to that, just as far as your phone, what kind of phone did you have at that time?
I believe an iPhone 14 Pro Max, maybe.
And I should have been more specific as far as the time, but the iPhone you're talking about as far as the Pro Max, was that in January of 2022
Oh, I'm sorry.
or in August of 2020?
That was in August.
And between January of 2022 and August of 2023, did you have the same phone throughout that time period?
I'm not sure. I believe I upgraded.
And when you upgraded your phone, what, if any, data sort of carried over from the old phone to the new phone?
Everything.
So as far as chats or text messages or phone contacts, things like that, all of that transferred from one phone to the new phone?
Correct.
And Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
And so first thing I'm going to show you a 2-page document to ask you to take a look at it and look up.
Okay.
And do you recognize that, man?
Yes.
And what do you recognize that?
This is from my phone, my text messages.
And the second page, what is that?
Colin's contact information.
Are those screenshots that you took from your phone and provided to the troopers in August of 2023?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
Call Malta seek to introduce the event as objection that has to be heard.
Okay, come on up and bring that.
I don't know what's going on. They're just super quiet. Karen is folding her arms, Bob. She has had enough. They'll just look at that. Would you look at that? I don't know. She just kind of looks like she wants to get it over with, you know? Bunch of rascals, right? Look at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All those people, nothing to say. It seems like every single person that they've had on this stand today has basically nothing to say except correcting the lawyers and asking them to rephrase questions. I don't know. I like when Pia comments on the gallery. I'm trying. I'm talking to myself here.
Step out for just a few minutes.
Okay, they're gonna step out for a few minutes. so- I will 13th, but look at how she's smiling. She does not look worried whatsoever. Unless that's a serious poker face, she does not look worried whatsoever. Not to me. I don't know. I feel like there were a lot of weird people on the stand today. People that had like interesting things, like that girl who said she saw the 8-inch tall whatever in the driveway. Yeah. Yeah, 13th hour, I agree. What'd you say?
Okay.
Snowbank, yeah.
If you could just briefly explain to the witness what's occurring.
Yes, I just need Miss Giannetti back.
Oh,
Okay. So
are we taking a break or are we not
thank
taking a break?
you. And the next two, if they would be marked separately, please. Thank you. All right, the lawyers are going to get to ask you a few questions now before we go any further in front of the jury.
Okay.
Okay. So, Mr. Lally, you can take the exhibits back and you can question this witness, and then Ms. Giannetti can cross-examine.
May I approach with?
Yes.
Alderman? So, Ms. McCabe, with reference to the two screenshots that we were just talking about before the jury left the room, those are screenshots that you took from your own phone, correct?
Correct.
And as far as the communications contained therein, is it your memory that those are communications? That
What is that one with the blue
Why
background?
don't you ask her what they are, non-leaded?
Those
Internet guy.
screenshots, as far as
Oh.
the communications, what are they? When were they done?
At a later date. Is that what you're asking? Sorry.
So I'm asking, as far as the actual content of the conversations, when did those conversations occur?
January 28th.
And you were a participant in those conversations?
Yes.
And as far as the content of those conversations, is it your memory that the content reflected there is accurate as to what the content of the conversations were between yourself and Colin Albert the evening of the 28th into the 29th?
Yes.
And Colin Albert was somebody that you were familiar with, correct?
Yes.
And beyond what's contained within these screenshots, you had had other text communications with Colin Albert using the same contact information.
Correct.
And how is it that you knew or were aware that the person or the contact that you were talking to was Colin Albert?
Because it's his phone.
With reference to that contact you had in your phone for Colin Albert, had you called that number before?
Yes.
When you called the number, who answered?
Colin.
And when you had texted Colin on prior occasions using that contact information, did you have any, you have a text communication, did you have any subsequent conversation in relation to the content of those text communications?
Sorry, can you rephrase that?
And I'm not just asking specifically about these. What I'm saying is you had a contact information in your phone for Colin Albert.
Yes.
And on any of those prior occasions when you had texted that contact information, you put in as Colin Albert into your phone. And just to be clear, you were the one who input that number as Colin Albert in your phone.
Yes.
And so on this or any prior occasions when you had contacted via text that contact of Colin Albert in your phone, following those text communications, did you have any conversation with Colin Albert related to the content of those communications?
Sorry, I'm confused.
Do you understand the question?
No, I'm-
You have to make
Sorry.
these simpler. Let's try and get through this voir dire, Mr. Allen.
The at some point during the course of your, how long had you had Colin's contact information in your phone?
For a while, years.
And over the course of those years, had you had conversations related to content in text in person?
Oh, yes.
And as far as the content that you had texted to that number you associated or input as Colin Albert, was Colin Albert aware of the content of those text communications?
Oh, correct. Yeah.
And within those specific screenshot of the text communications from that evening, as far as your recollection of that particular evening, are the times that are associated with those accurate as far as your memory?
Yes.
And did you do anything to alter the times that are associated with those text communications prior to taking a screenshot and giving it to the state police?
No.
Now turning to the other two screenshots that you took, those are photographs, correct?
Did I take them?
I'm just asking what they are.
Oh, both pictures of Colin. One's with my aunt. The other's just him and some other people blocked off.
And do you know when and where those were taken?
Yes, they were taken at the Albert's house. One of their sons were coming home from the Marines, so it was like a welcome home party.
And when was that in relation to the evening of January 28th, 29th?
A few weeks after.
And that sort of coming home celebration for your cousin who was coming home from the Marines, were you there for that?
Yes.
And so as far as your observation of those photographs is what's depicted of Colin Albert, is that a fair and accurate portrayal of what he looked like on February 11th?
Yes.
I have nothing further.
All right, Ms. Gianetti?
Thank you, Ron. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How long have you had an iPhone? I'm not talking about your current iPhone, but just iPhones in general.
For years.
More than 5 years?
Yes.
And how old are you now?
I'm 20.
20. And when did you get your first iPhone, if you remember?
I don't remember.
12, 13?
Yeah, around middle
So-
schoolish.
Maybe 7 or 8 years, is that a decent estimate?
Yes.
And in those 7 or 8 years, you have learned how to operate an iPhone, the various features that they have and the apps that you can download and use, correct?
Correct.
And your current iPhone has a number of apps on it, correct?
Correct.
With regard to the text message app, you'll agree with me that that is a green icon with a white sort of speech bubble in the middle of it.
Yes, I believe.
And you know that when you click on that, it gives you a list of the text messages that you're exchanging with people, the various threads, correct?
Correct.
You know that if you click on a thread, it opens up the individual text messages that you've sent and received to that particular person, correct?
Correct.
And you know that if you take your finger or your thumb and you hold it on one particular text that's either sent to you or from you, you can do things with that individual text, correct?
Correct.
You can
do you mean?
forward it to somebody else, right?
Correct, I believe.
In the context of a conversation, you can just reply to that one particular text message, right?
Correct.
And if you do that, rather than hit the arrow button where you forward or reply, on the left side of the screen, there's a trash can, correct?
I'm not sure.
You know that you can delete a text from a thread, correct?
Correct.
And it's a trash can that you
Oh.
click on, right?
Correct.
I'm not trying to trick you.
No, I was confused. Sorry.
No, I understand. I don't mean to confuse you. So you know that if you click on the trash can, it gives you an option to either cancel or to delete the message, correct?
Correct.
And what happens if you delete the message?
It's deleted off the phone.
Okay, so it's gone from that thread, correct?
Correct.
And somebody looking at a screenshot that you take after you've deleted that message, it wouldn't be evident that that message was ever there, correct?
Correct.
Now, you testified at a hearing in Boston on August 3rd of 2023, correct?
Correct.
That was, and we're not with a jury present, that was a federal grand jury, correct?
Correct.
And you had, by that point, by August of 2023, you no longer had the phone that you originally had on January 29th of 22, correct?
Yes, I believe so.
You had gotten a new phone in December of 2022, correct?
Okay, I'm not sure what time, but
Does that?
yeah,
sound-
I got a new
Right.
phone. I believe I got a new phone.
But, and actually, the timing is not that important, just that it was before that grand jury appearance.
Okay, yes.
All right. And what did you do with the old phone when you got the new phone?
Transfer through iCloud, everything transfers over.
Okay, but I'm actually talking about the hardware itself.
Oh, what did I do?
iPhone.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yes, I'm sorry. Not the data on the phone. I understand that you've testified that you transferred that to the new phone, but the actual physical phone itself, where did that go when you got the new phone?
I'm not sure.
Would that have been traded in?
Possibly.
You don't have it now, correct?
I don't think, no.
And as of August of 2023, you didn't have it either, correct?
Correct.
Is it fair to say that no investigator from this case ever asked you for that phone that you had on January 29th?
Correct.
They
Right, so,
never-
Ms. Dianetti, can we just focus on the voir dire? All that you're doing, you can cross-examine her with, but on the voir dire of this.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure.
I'd just like to get the jurors back in.
No, I understand, Your Honor. I understand. I was trying to lay a foundation, but maybe it's not necessary. So with regard to
If you need to do it, go ahead. I'm just trying to.
I want to accommodate the court, Your Honor. With regard to the messages that are in a given thread, right? We've talked about the fact that you are aware that you can reply to them, an individual message, forward or delete one, correct?
Correct.
You're also aware that it is possible to change the timestamp on any individual message, correct?
No, I'm not aware of that.
You go to settings and you go to general and you go to date and time. First of all, you can change the time zone of the message. Do you have your iPhone with you right now?
Not on me.
Not on. And in addition to being able to change the time zone, you actually can change the hour and minute to whatever you want it to be. Were you aware of that?
No.
With regard to photos on your phone, you are aware that you can change the date and time of any photo in your photo app, correct?
Nope.
There is a little, when you go to your iPhone, there's a little I for information. And all you need to do is, I think it's for info or information. All you need to do is click on that and you get a pop-up from the bottom that gives you the choice to alter the date and time. Did you know that?
No.
Next to that date and time is the word adjust. And that's all you have to click on. And you can change the time from 12:10 a.m. or you can change it from 12:40 a.m. to 12:10 a.m. or you can change it from 1:45 to 12:10 a.m. And it's that easy.
Yep. Now I know. I didn't know that. I didn't do that.
If I may have a moment.
Okay.
That's it for the one year one.
Okay. So I'm going to allow this testimony, and your argument goes to the weight of the evidence, not its admissibility. But I did, under Commonwealth versus Tracci, want to give you your voir dire. Okay. All right. So let's bring the jurors back in.
Yes, P-U-R-D-Y. Your Honor, before the jurors come back in, may I just retrieve the exhibits?
Yes, but I'd like to see counsel at sidebar while they're coming in. Hunter, I think we should sit. Oh, sorry.
Court's back in session, please be seated. Your Honor, I apologize profusely. I just need one more minute. I'm so sorry.
And Mr. Lally, I have an instruction to give if you're going to put in that screenshot.
Yes.
Okay. Jurors, remember, I've told you this before you consider any electronic communication in your deliberations, you must find first that it is more likely true than not that the person who authored or sent the communication was in fact either Colin Albert or Ms. Ally McCabe. If you do not find that it's more likely true than not that Ms. McCabe or Mr. Albert was the person who authored or created or transmitted the electronic communication, then you cannot consider that communication in your deliberations. So with that, Mr. Lally?
Thank you. And Your Honor, the first two pages that's been marked AA, Commonwealth would seek to introduce and admit as the next exhibit.
Okay, those may be admitted.
And subject to our conversation at sidebar.
Yes.
And Your Honor, if I may just approach to return it to the witness.
Sure.
Thank you.
Now, Ms. McCabe, with reference to, well, before we get into that, you had an iPhone at the time of January 26th, is that correct?
Correct.
And with respect to your friend Colin Alberts, as far as his contact information within your phone, who entered that in your phone?
I did.
And prior to that date of January 28th into the 29th, 2022, had you had phone conversations where you would sort of press the button to call that number and it rang, correct?
Correct.
And who, if anyone, answered the phone when you contacted that phone number in your phone?
Colin.
Now, with reference to Colin and the contact in your phone, had you had prior text communications with Colin using that contact that you put in?
Correct.
And outside of those text communications that you had, did you have sort of physical, in-person conversations with Colin in regard to content that was within text messages you have with that content?
Yes, I assume so.
And specifically on that date of January 28th and the 29th, when you arrived at the home on Fairview Road, you texted Colin that you were there?
Yes.
And after you texted him that, what, if anything, happened after that?
He responded saying okay, and then he came out to the car.
And Your Honor, if I may, with the court's permission, just publish the text communication to the jury on the screen.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, Ms. Gilman, if you could scroll down a bit. Now, what's up on the screen, Mr. McCabe, is that what you have before you as the exhibit?
Yes.
And looking at, there's sort of one side has text and one side has a blue bubble, is that correct?
Yes.
And if you know who is communicating with who as far as the sort of plain text outside of the bubble?
Colin and I? Is that what you're asking? Sorry.
What I'm asking is, who's the blue bubble?
Oh, sorry. I'm the blue bubble and he is the gray whitish bubble.
And from sort of the top of what's depicted on the screen, you read the text that you received and the time that you received.
Yes. 11:54, and then I responded at 11:55.
And what did Colin say at 11:50?
You can get me now if easier.
And what did you respond?
Okay, I am driving people home now.
And what did Colin respond to that, and what time did he respond?
He responded, word, get me after.
And Mr. Chairman, if you could scroll down. And following the getting after, what if any response did you provide?
KK, okay, and here,
And here that you texted, what time does that read on the screenshot?
12:10 a.m.
And what if anything did Colin respond to your text?
He responded at the same time saying, okay.
Assuming you can take that. May I approach just to retrieve your?
Yes.
Do you need that? Thank you. Okay, thank you.
So the next two pages, two separate pages, contain photographs, is that correct?
Yes,
And do you recognize what's depicted in those photographs that I've just placed before you?
yes.
What do you recognize those?
It's Colin. Is that what you're asking?
Well, let me ask you more specifically.
Okay.
So, were these also screenshots that you provided to troopers of the state police in August of 2020?
Yes, I believe so.
What, in regard to those two photographs, do you know when and where those photographs were taken?
They were taken February 11th at the Alberts, Nicole and Brian's house.
Objection. Move to strike.
No, I'm going to let her testify when they were taken.
And so February 11th of what year, ma'am?
2022.
So a few weeks after January 28th, 29th, correct?
Yes,
And were you present at the Alberts house on the evening of February 11th when they were taken?
yes.
And what was the purpose of yourself and or Colin or anybody being over the Alberts house on that day?
one of Nicole and Brian's sons were coming home from their Marines. So there was like a welcome home party with family and friends.
And that is your cousin Jack, is that correct?
Correct.
And as far as what's contained in those photographs, is that a fair and accurate portrayal as far as your memory of what Colin looked like on February 11th?
Correct.
And Your Honor, may I approach again?
Yes.
Commonwealth will seek to introduce in a minute the next two exhibits. Again, subject to our discussion.
Sure. Okay. Yes, those are clear.
And then just returning those to you, and first I would direct your attention to what's been now marked as Exhibit 82. Ms. Gilman, with the court's permission, may I publish those to the jury? at this time
Yes.
as well? Your Honor, may I just have a moment?
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, if you could just enlarge that a bit. And do you recognize what's now up on the screen is what you have before you as Exhibit 82?
Yes.
And if you could just describe to the jury sort of what we're looking at in this photograph, who's the biggest?
Colin and my auntie Coco.
And your auntie Coco is also Nicole Albert, is
Yeah.
that correct?
Yes, Nicole.
And if I could direct your attention to the next exhibit for you, Exhibit 83. I'm gonna keep that up on the screen. And Ms. Gilman, if you could allow. And again, what's up on the screen, is that what you have before you as Exhibit 83?
Yes.
This is the same evening, is that correct?
Correct.
You know where in the house this photograph was taken?
I believe they call it their library. Maybe it's the room in the back.
And as far as what's contained in this photograph in reference to your friend Colin Albert, as far as his face, his arms, his hands, is that fair and accurate portrayal of what he looked like on February 11th?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Ms. Gilman, you can take it. I may approach one more time just to
Yes.
retrieve.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Okay. Stianetti?
Thank you. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Ms. McCabe, you have known Colin Albert your whole life, correct?
Correct.
Your mother is Jennifer McCabe.
Correct.
His mother is Julie Albert,
Correct.
and her maiden name was Julie Daniels.
Correct.
Your mother, Jennifer, grew up together with his mother, Julie, correct?
Correct.
You and Colin are extremely close, correct?
Yes.
In fact, you would consider Colin Albert to be one of your best friends in the world, correct?
Yes, he's one of my best friends.
Now, you claim that you took a screenshot of a text conversation that you had with Colin Albert on January 29th of 2022, correct?
Correct.
Those were the screenshots that were just shown to this jury this afternoon, correct?
Correct.
And you claim that the information on that screenshot actually existed on January 29th, correct?
Correct.
Did you tell your mother, Jennifer McCabe, that you had that text conversation with Colin Albert anytime after January 29th of 2022?
Objection.
Sustained.
Did you give to your mother, Jennifer McCabe, a screenshot of that text message conversation.
Objection.
Sustained.
It's fair to say that on January 29th, 30th, 31st, you did not turn over that screenshot to any law enforcement official, correct, of 2022?
No, I was never asked.
No investigator from this case ever asked you for copies or a copy of that screenshot of that text message conversation on January 29th, 30th, or 31st, correct?
Correct.
They also did not ask you for a copy of that screenshot through the whole month of February, correct?
Correct.
In fact, all of 2022, no investigator ever approached you to say, can I have a copy of that screenshot, correct?
Correct.
And in addition to that, you never called an investigator to say, hey, I have a copy of a screenshot of a text message conversation that I had with Colin Alpert, correct?
No, it wouldn't have been relevant at that time,
Okay.
I believe, because Colin was not at the house and wasn't introduced as being there until later.
So your testimony today is that at no time in the year 2022 did you consider it relevant at all that you had this screenshot of this text conversation, correct?
Correct.
Leaving that screenshot aside, but actually, before I leave that topic, you didn't turn over that screenshot of a text message until sometime during the summer of 2023, correct?
Correct.
About a year and a half or more after January 29th of 2022, correct?
Yes, when I was asked.
And by that time, the summer of 2023, you had already switched phones, correct?
Yes, believe.
In other words, the iPhone that you had on January 29th of 2022, you no longer had possession of that physical phone, correct?
Correct.
You had a new iPhone, correct?
Correct.
And you say that you transferred over the data from the old phone to the new phone, correct?
Correct.
When did you take that screenshot that was displayed to the jury today?
I don't remember.
Was it before or after you got rid of your old phone?
I don't remember.
So we don't know if that screenshot was from your phone that you got in December of 2022, or if it was from the phone that you had back in January of 2022, correct?
Correct.
That phone that you got in December of 2022, it's now May of 2024. Do you still have that same phone?
The phone, my old phone? Is that
No, my question was,
the,
and again, I'm not trying to trick you in any way here. The phone that you got in December of 2022, the new phone at that time, is that the phone, your current phone?
correct?
Now, before you got rid of the old phone and got the new one, did any law enforcement official, prior to that December of 2022 time period, or investigator from this case ever ask to examine your physical phone itself?
No.
Did they ever say to you, we would like to do what's called an extraction on your phone?
No.
And you never gave that phone at any point to any law enforcement official before you got rid of it, correct?
Correct.
And the first time that you mentioned that text conversation outside your family was August 3rd of 2023, correct?
Correct.
That was at a proceeding in Boston, correct?
Correct.
Where neither Mr. Lally or Ms. McLaughlin are we with it.
Objection, Your Honor.
Yeah, move along, Mr. Yannetti.
Yes. That proceeding in August of 2023 was less than a year ago, correct? We're in May of 2024.
Correct.
And that was a long time after John O'Keefe was found dead on Brian Albert's lawn, correct?
Correct.
And that August of 2023, when you're revealing that text exchange, that was over a year and a half after January 29th of 2022, correct?
Correct.
And leaving aside the screenshot, as of August 3rd of 2023, no investigator from this case, no state police trooper or anybody from the DA's office had ever interviewed you, right? Prior to August of 2023?
I talked to the state troopers, but I don't know if that was before or after.
That was on August 25th of 2023, which is about 3 weeks after your testimony in the other proceeding. Does that refresh your memory?
Yes, then after.
And
Yeah,
at that point in time, on August 25th of 2023, you'll agree with me that you were not interviewed at a police station or a state police barracks, correct?
correct.
Or the DA's office, correct?
Correct.
You were interviewed by Zoom, correct?
Correct.
And you were not alone at that time in your home, correct?
I'm not sure.
Your mother, Jennifer McCabe, was present, correct?
Okay.
And she was monitoring what was going on in that interview, correct?
Objection.
Was that true? Do you
I
remember?
don't recall.
Okay. In any case, that too was over a year and a half after January 29th, correct?
Correct.
All right. Now, I'd like to ask you some questions about, oh, by the way, you've had an iPhone since you were 12 or 13 years old,
Correct.
and you're now how old?
20.
So 7 or 8 years would be a good estimate as to how long you've worked with iPhones?
Correct.
And obviously you know how an iPhone works, correct?
Correct.
You know how to reply and comment on text messages, correct?
Correct.
And you know that there's a lot of tools open to you to comment on text messages, correct?
Correct.
You can reply to a text using an icon or an emoji, right? To like or dislike something that somebody else said.
Correct.
You can laugh at it, you can love it, you can like it, correct?
Objection.
Oh,
Right?
Correct.
And they make it pretty easy, right? All you need to do is put your finger or your thumb on a specific message and hold it down and options appear, correct?
Correct.
And that's where you get the thumbs up, the thumbs down, the ha-ha, exclamation points, question mark, etc.
Correct.
And you also have other options, which is down the bottom, there's a kind of a curved arrow where if you click on that, you can forward the message or reply to a specific message, correct?
Correct.
And on the left, there's a trash can, right?
Correct.
And what happens when you click on the trash can?
It will delete the message from your phone.
And it's your testimony that
Black Rock Bar and Grill is the dinner time destination for your entire family. Treat everyone to sizzling dinner time specials.
is in that conversation, correct?
Yes.
However, you would agree, as you've already testified, that if a message had been deleted from a screenshot, we'd never know, right?
True.
You're also familiar with the apps that are on iPhones, correct?
Correct.
You have a number of apps on your iPhone, right?
Correct.
There might be 12 or 15, I haven't counted them, but 12 or 15 maybe on your home screen, right?
Correct.
And if you swipe to the left, you get another new population of 12 or 15.
Correct.
Not bad for an old guy.
Yeah.
And you use apps like Instagram.
Correct.
Snapchat is a popular app.
Correct.
And probably to your detriment, but Life 360,
Correct.
all right? That's been an app in the McCabe family for a number of years, right?
Correct. Yes.
And it's in your family anyway, and probably in a lot of families, it's mainly used for the parents to keep track of their kids, right?
Correct.
And in order for Life 360 to work, you have to have your location services on, and somebody else has to have the app and is in the family, correct? Connected to you?
Correct.
And with regard to, just going back to the messages for a minute, do you know the difference between an iMessage and a text message?
Yes, I believe one's blue and one's green.
Okay. The screenshots that we saw of your text conversation that you say that you had with Colin Albert, you were in blue, right?
Correct.
That means that Colin Albert also had an iPhone at the time, correct?
Correct.
Now, with regard to the timestamp on those messages, the conversation about I'm here, I believe gave the time 12:10 a.m., correct?
Correct.
Are you aware how easy it is to change that time? Are you aware that all you need to do is go from settings to general, and then there's a date and time that you can alter?
Objection.
Are you aware of that?
No, I didn't know that was a thing.
You know that when you set up your iPhone, you have to choose a time zone, correct?
Correct.
And you always choose the New York time zone because that's where Boston is, right?
Correct.
Are you aware that if you go into settings, general, and then date and time, you can change the time zone to wherever you're going?
I guess I didn't. Once I set my phone up, I have no reason to change the time.
See? And in addition to changing the time zone, you literally can choose any time that you want. You could make 1:45 a.m., 12:10 a.m. in about 3 seconds. Did you know
Objection.
that?
Do you know that? Did you know that?
No.
But if I'm not accusing you of this now, but if you had changed the time on that from a screenshot, we'd have no way of knowing, correct?
I guess.
Because what a screenshot ultimately becomes is like a photo, correct?
Correct.
It's not like you can edit it, right? I mean, the most that you can do is what we saw on the other photo that was displayed, which is kind of crossing out with a magic marker somebody's face or a time, right? That would be how you'd have to alter it, right?
Correct.
Now, I had asked you if prior to getting rid of your old phone and getting the new one, if law enforcement ever asked you to, go through the phone themselves, and you had said no, right?
Yes, they did not do that.
And they never asked to do an extraction on the old phone, correct?
No.
What about the new phone that you now have that you got in December? Have the state police ever asked to do, have they ever asked to look through that phone?
They look, no, I don't think so.
You provided the screenshot that was shown to the jury today on August 25th when you talked to the state police in this case, right, of 2023?
Correct.
And when you provided them that screenshot, did they say, hey, by the way, can I look at your phone to see if it's on there?
Objection.
I'll allow that. Did they say that to you?
I don't remember.
But in any case, you never physically showed them your phone, right?
No.
You don't recall clicking on that text message app, the green app with the kind of white speech bubble. You didn't click on that and then click on the Colin Albert conversation and say, here it is, did you?
No.
And in addition to not asking you to see your new phone, they also did not ask you to do an extraction of your new phone, correct?
Correct.
And at some point in time, you realized that you'd have to be a witness in this case and have the unfortunate incident of having to talk to me, right?
Objection.
I'm going to see Counsel at sidebar for just a minute on this.
Okay, and just to wrap this up, to this day, no extraction has been done on your phone, correct?
Correct.
Now, when you had that Zoom interview on August 25th, you told the trooper that you drove Colin straight to his house after you picked him up on January 29th, and then you went straight home, correct?
Yes, I believe.
And you have previously testified back in August of 2023 that you believe you dropped Colin Albert off at his home at around 12:15, 12:20 or so?
Correct.
And when you left, and by the way, you're very familiar with 34 Fairview, right?
Correct.
That's family, correct?
Correct.
Been over there many, many, many times, correct?
Correct.
And you're familiar with the neighborhood in terms of the streets that are around there, right?
Correct.
And you've lived in Canton your whole life?
Yes, yeah.
When you were a baby, you were in Stoughton?
Yes.
Basically, you're a Canton girl, right?
Yes.
And can you tell the jury the route that you took home from 34 Fairview, or actually strike that, the route that you took to Colin Albert's house when you left 34 Fairview on January 29th?
I don't remember specifically, but I would believe I drove up Fairview. Then, sorry, I don't know the streets.
If I suggested to you that the street closest to 34 Fairview was Cedar Crest and the one on the other side is Chapman, does that refresh your memory?
Yeah, so Chapman.
Okay, so
I
you would have
believe.
gone up and gone to Chapman and taken a right or a left?
Really bad with directions. When I got there, I went to the center of town, his house. I don't know specifically which way. I'm trying to think of it. I can't picture it.
Yes.
Are you familiar with Washington Street in Canton?
Yes.
Would you have wound up on Washington Street?
Yes.
All right. And you're aware that the Canton Library is on the corner of Washington and Sherman Street? Does that make sense?
Yes.
So you would have passed by the library?
Yes.
Now, with regard to whether you went straight home, did you, by the way, when you went home, did you stay there?
Yes, I believe so.
For in the rest of the night?
Yes.
Okay, and what time do you say that you arrived at home?
I'm not sure. Before around 12:30ish.
Okay. With regard to Life 360, would you agree with me that if you go on that app and you're trying to figure out where somebody in your family is, there's and let's say you want to know if somebody's home. There's like a circle that surrounds your home, correct?
Yes.
So once you enter that circle, you know that Life 360 gives an alert that said you arrived at home. Even though you're physically not walking in the door, you're within that circle, and that's the home circle, right?
Yes.
On January 29th of 2022, at 12:04 and 53 seconds, you arrived within that home circle, correct?
Correct.
And then at 12:06 and 55 seconds on January 29th, you left that home circle, correct?
Correct.
And then on January 29th of 2022 at 12:23 and 14 seconds, you completed a 7-mile drive where your top speed was 42 miles an hour. Does that make sense?
Correct.
And then you left home on January 29th of 2022 at 12:23 and 14 seconds as well. And what that probably means, reading between the lines, is that you entered that home circle, but then you didn't go home. You went through the home circle and completed a 7-mile drive somewhere, right?
I guess. I thought I went home. I'm
Objection, Your Honor.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't hear your answer.
not. I believe I went home. I
Okay.
was completing my drive at my house.
All right, but at 12:26 a.m. on January 29th, you left home again, right?
Objection, Your Honor.
Did you leave home?
I don't know. I don't remember.
All right. And at 12:26 a.m. and 12 seconds, you arrived at the Canton High School, correct?
No.
On January 29th of 2022, at 12:26 and 55 seconds, you completed a 1 mile drive where your top speed was 43 miles per hour, right?
I don't believe so.
And then at 12:26 and 55 seconds on January 29th, you left Canton High School and arrived at home on January 29th of 2022 at 12:29 and 28 seconds, correct?
I do not know.
And then after arriving home again on January 29th of 2022 at 12:29 and 29 seconds, you completed a 12-mile drive on January 29th of 2022 at 12:31 and 22 seconds, did you not?
No.
And then you left home on January 29th of 2022 at 1:08 and 15 seconds, right?
I don't believe so.
And ultimately, you went through the home bubble and the Canton High School bubble, and you arrived at Canton High School on January 29th of 2022 at 1:28 in the morning and 8 seconds.
Can I see what you're referring to?
Sure. May I approach you on?
Yes.
You probably don't need these, right?
No, I'm good.
Okay, and to make it easy, I mean, you can read the whole thing, but where it says record 16 is what I just asked you about, but feel free to read the whole thing.
Thank you.
And if you would, read it silently to yourself and look up at me when you're done. Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. Sorry. May I approach?
Yes.
Did that help refresh your memory on where you were that night?
No.
Do you still dispute that you went straight home and didn't leave there?
Objection.
Sustained.
And finally, I just asked you about arriving at Canton High School on January 29th of 2022 at 1:28 and 8 seconds. You arrived at home, within that home bubble, on January 29th of 2022 at 1:30 in the morning and 26 seconds, correct?
What time did it say I arrived at high school?
1:30 in the morning and 26 seconds.
And what time did it say I arrived at high school?
The high school was 1:28 and 8 seconds.
It wouldn't have taken me 2 minutes to go from the high school to my house. I'm
Well,
confused.
with regard to the high school was also one of the bubbles, one of the areas where you could be, right, on Life 360?
No.
If I may.
Yes.
Okay. Did you say that on Life 360, the Canton High School is not one of the areas that you're tracked in?
What do you mean?
So remember, do you remember we were talking earlier about?
Oh, like put in a location like that was
Yeah, so there
home,
are
that was
multiple
high school.
locations, like, if your mother's looking for you, where are you?
Yes.
Well, you're at D&E Pizza, you're at high school, you're at, home, right? I mean, those could be categories.
Correct.
You've agreed that home was one of the categories.
Correct.
And having reviewed that, the Canton High School is also in one of the categories, correct?
I believe so.
All right. And on January 29th of 2022, the last entry is that you completed a 12-mile drive on January 29th of 2022 at 1:32 in the morning and 23 seconds. And that's the end of the activity. Do you agree with me that that's when you finally stopped that night?
I don't recall.
If I may have a moment.
Yes.
No further questions. Thank you, Ron.
All right, Mr. Lally.
Thank you. Now, Ms. McCabe, with regard to, did you get rid of your prior iPhone or did you upgrade your iPhone?
Upgrade.
And that would have been in December of 2022, is that correct?
Yes, I believe so.
Was it sometime around Christmas?
Yeah, probably.
And that could have been a present as far as getting a new iPhone or upgrading your iPhone?
Yes.
Now, as far as any of the information that you were shown as far as the screenshot, did you in any way, shape, or form alter or delete any of the content within that text message from January 28th and the 29th of with Colin Allen?
No.
And with reference to changing times or time zones or anything on text messages, before Mr. Yannetti asked you any of those questions, were you aware of any of those things as things that you could do with your phone?
No.
With regard to Life 360, what, if any, knowledge do you have as far as the accuracy of sort of the timestamps that are contained within that app?
Well, I'm not sure, but on the photo he showed me, it says like turn Wi-Fi on. So that like remind Allie to turn Wi-Fi on. So that could have affected the accuracy.
And that was on literally every single one of the alerts that was on that page that he showed you.
Every single one.
Now, Canton High School, do you know what street that's on?
Washington Street, I believe.
And
Yeah.
about how far a ride is it from Canton High School to your house?
7-8 minutes, 10. I'm not sure.
You were in the bubble of Canton High School at 1:28 in the morning. Could you have possibly been in the bubble of your home at 1:30 in the morning?
No.
And unless you were going 90 miles an hour in a snowstorm?
No.
Now, you were asked some questions about that time frame of August of 2023 when you were asked and you turned over sort of screenshots to troopers from the state police, correct?
Correct.
You were asked about previous times indicating that you weren't asked and it wasn't relevant, correct?
Correct.
Now, do you know why you were asked in August of 2023 versus any prior time period?
Because Colin Albert wasn't in the house, and then it was brought up here that he was.
And brought up where?
By the defense.
And around that time of August 2023?
I believe so. Yes.
And with reference to relevancy, is that what you were talking about?
Correct.
And what, if anything else, you're close friends with Colin Albert, is that correct?
Correct.
What, if anything else, has either your family or Colin Albert and his family undergone over the course of pendency of this case?
Objection.
No, the door's been opened. I'm allowing it.
Well, basically harassment.
Harassment by who?
Bloggers, people online.
And what, if anything, in relation to Colin Albert being in the house has occurred as far as the harassment that you're talking about?
Can you rephrase?
With reference to what you were talking about as far as the relevancy of Colin Albert being in the house at that time, what, if any, harassment was there in relation to that and in relation to Colin?
Well,
Objection.
No, go ahead. She can answer.
Colin wasn't at the house, so he's being harassed he was not at the house when John was there, so I drove him home. So the people are harassing him saying he was at the house when it's not true.
When you speak about harassment, what specifically type of harassment are we
Constant phone calls, emails, awful messages.
Objection.
I'll allow it. Focus on this witness, not Colin Albert at this point.
As far as you and your family, what, if any, type of harassment have you received?
People showing up at our house, people emailing my school. Just like a lot of harassment. Can I have a moment, please?
Sure.
Okay, I'm sorry. I have some, thank you.
And how long a period of time has that persisted for?
Very long time.
Thank you. I have no further.
I have nothing further.
All right, Ms. McCabe, you're all set.
Thank you.
Your next witness, Mr. Lally.
Yes, Your Honor. The Commonwealth will call Colin Albert to the stand.
Do you solemnly swear the evidence given to the court and during the case now hearing should the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I did.
Whenever you're ready, Mr. Lally.
Thank you. Good afternoon, sir.
How are you?
Could you please state your name and spell your last name?
Colin Albert, ALBERT,
And where do you live, sir?
Canton, Mass.
And how long have you lived in Canton?
My whole life.
And who, if anyone, do you live in Canton with?
I live with my mother, my father, and my two brothers,
And your mother and your father, what are their names?
Julie and Chris Albert.
And your brothers, what are their names?
Chris and Dylan Albert.
And as far as within the age of you and your two brothers, where do you fall in that?
I am the middle child.
And how old are you, sir?
I'm 20 years old.
And do you work? Do you go to school?
I go to school at Bridgewater State.
And what year are you in?
I am going into my junior year.
Now, sir, if I could turn your attention to January 28th into January 29th of 2022. Do you recall those days?
Yes.
Do you recall what days of the week they were?
I do not.
Do you recall whether it was a weekday, weekend?
Weekend.
And turning your attention to the evening of January 28th, do you recall where you went that night?
Yes, I do.
And just to be clear, around that time, were you in college? Were you in high school? What grade were you in?
I was a senior in high school.
So end of January, you would have been about 4 months away or so from graduation, correct?
Yes, sir.
And on that evening, where did you, at some point, did you leave your home and go out?
Yes, I did.
And do you recall about what time it was that you went out?
I do not remember.
Do you recall whether it was light or dark when you went out?
It was dark.
And where did you, upon leaving your house, where did you go?
I went to one of my buddy's houses.
And that buddy, what was his,
Mike.
and where does Mike live in relation to you?
Can you rephrase that?
Does Mike live in Canton as well?
Yes, he does.
And about how far is it from your house to Mike's?
About like 7-8 minutes.
And when you got to Mike's house, was it just you and Mike, or who, if anyone else, was there?
I do not remember who was there.
Was there more than just the two of you?
Yes.
And generally speaking, when you got to Mike's house, what is it that you did when you got there?
I do not remember.
Now, as far as how you got from your house to Mike's house, do you recall how you got there?
No, I do not remember.
Let me ask you this. Did you walk? Did you drive? Did you get a ride?
I got a ride.
Do you recall who you got a ride from?
No.
And when you, do you recall, let me ask you this, as far as that particular night that you went out, did you drink any alcoholic beverages while you were out?
Yes.
And did you drink any of those at Mike's house?
Yes.
And do you recall generally what you were drinking that night?
Bud Light.
And when you were at Mike's house on that particular evening, do you recall about how long you were there for?
A few hours.
And do you recall how much you had to drink while you were at Mike's house?
I do not remember.
And so in reference to you going out and going over Mike's house and having some beers over there, is that why you didn't drive?
Yes.
So you got a ride from someone over to Mike's house, you spent some hours there, and then do you recall where you went from there?
I went to my uncle's house.
And fair to say you have a relatively large extended family within Canton, is that correct?
Yes.
And so when you say you went to your uncle's house, which uncle's house did you go to?
My Uncle Brian.
And that would be same last name as yourself, so Brian Albert.
Yes.
And how is he your uncle? Sort of how is he related to
He is my father's brother.
you? And why did you go to your uncle's house that night?
It was my cousin Brian's birthday, so I went over to celebrate for a little bit with him.
And so that would be Brian Albert Jr., is that right?
Sir.
And do you know how old your cousin Brian Albert Jr. was turning on that night?
I do not know.
Do you recall how you got from Mike's house to your uncle's house?
I believe Allie McCabe.
And do you know the address as far as your uncle's house?
34 Fairview Road.
Is that somewhere, your family's house, is that somewhere that you had been before?
Yes.
And so your memory is that Allie McCabe gave you a ride.
Your skin isn't the same as everyone else's. That's why Agency designed Future Formula, a personal.
Now, Allie McCabe, as far as who is that to you? Or what, if any, kind of relationship you have with Allie?
It is my cousin's cousin. So not technically my cousin, but we're close and like we do family events and stuff like that together.
And you and Miss McCabe, are you in the same grade?
Yes.
And how long have you known each
My whole entire life.
other? So not blood related, but someone that you see at family events.
Yes.
And someone that was in the same grade and went to the same school as you?
Correct.
And that school, which school did you go to at that time?
Canton High School.
And do you recall about what time it was that you arrived at the house on Fairview?
Between 10:30 and 11 at night.
And did you have at that time any kind of curfew or time that you had to be home from your parents?
Usually around like right around before midnight.
And so was it like a hard fast, like 12 o'clock, if you're not here, you're grounded, or was it sort of around that time?
Just around midnight.
And so after, when you arrive there, you go into the house, is that right?
Yes.
And the house at 34 Fairview has a couple of different ways to get in the house in the front, is that correct?
Correct.
And do you recall which way that you went in that evening?
The side door near the garage.
And when you come into the house, where did you go within the house? What room did you go into?
The living room.
And then from the living room, where else did you go within the house?
Like the kitchen area.
And within the kitchen area of the house, who, if anyone else, was present in the kitchen?
From what I remember, my cousin Brian, Emily Fabiano, Sarah Levinson, and Catherine Duty, from what I remember that night.
Is it possible there were other people there that you just don't recall?
Like sitting around the kitchen table, I would say.
Now, after you arrived there, well, when you arrived there, what is it that they were doing when you walked in?
Just listening to music and having a couple of drinks.
And you come in, you greet people, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, the other people that you talked about, as far as beyond your cousin Brian Albert Jr., did you know those other people?
I knew of them. I wasn't friends with them or anything.
Fair to say they were older than you were, is that correct?
Correct.
So like Miss Levinson would have been older than you by at least a few years at that point.
Yes.
And the same with reference to, I believe you said Miss Fabiano and Miss Duty, is that correct?
Correct.
Now, when you arrive at the house, did you have any other drinks once you got there?
Yes.
And do you recall what, if anything, you drank once you got
Bud Light.
there? So same as you were having before?
Correct.
You know how many that you had while you were at 34 Fairview?
I do not remember.
And over the course of the evening, whether it was at Mike's house or in between, or when you got to 34 Fairview, did you feel yourself as far as like overly intoxicated or drunk or anything like that?
No.
And as far as the other people that you observed at the house that night, does anybody stick out to you as being overly intoxicated or fall down drunk or anything like that?
No.
Now, with reference to when you came into the house, you mentioned there was music playing. How would you describe sort of the general mood within the house?
I was happy. I was, yeah.
Now, as far as that area where you first observed the people around the table in the kitchen dining room area when you came in, did you ever see anybody else go anywhere else in the house?
Not that I remember.
Did you yourself go anywhere else in the house?
No.
At any point in time in the evening while you were there, did you go upstairs or downstairs in the basement or out in the backyard or anywhere else besides the kitchen dining room area?
No.
Beyond maybe the restroom at some point?
Yeah. Other than that, no.
And about how long were you at your uncle's house that night to celebrate your cousin's birthday?
Probably around like an hour and a half.
And so about what time would it have been that you left?
12:10.
And with respect to your leaving the house, who, if anyone, did you contact to facilitate?
Rephrase.
Let me ask it in a much easier, better way. Okay. As far as your plans were concerned, as far as leaving the house, who, if anyone, did you reach out to get a ride from?
My friend Allie McCabe.
And how did you reach out to her?
I texted her.
And do you recall whether or not you had any sort of other communication? Well, let me step back and ask it this way. At that point in time, in January of 2022, you had Ms. McCabe's information saved as a contact in your phone, is that correct?
Correct.
And on prior occasions, had you had a chance to, call that number from your cell phone that you had programmed in as Allie McCabe?
Correct.
And when you called that number, who, if anyone, answered the phone?
Allie.
Now, with respect to text communications, had you had text communications with that contact in your phone as Allie McCabe prior to that date of January 28th?
Yes.
And when you had those conversations, did you then also have subsequent sort of in-person conversations with Allie McCabe as well?
Yes.
And during those in-person conversations, was there any reference or anything talked about content that had been previously sent and communicated via text?
No.
Let me ask it in a better way. So you would have text communications with the person you put in as a contact as Allie McCabe, correct?
Yes.
And then subsequent to having those text communications, you would then speak to her either in person or over the phone, correct?
Objection.
The objection is sustained. Watch the form of your questions.
Following those text communications with the person that you had input in your phone, what, if any, verbal conversations would you have in reference to the content of the text?
I'm not sure what you're asking. But
Did you talk to her in person about something you had talked to her about in text?
no.
Now, with reference on that specific date of January 28th, had you Was text communications the only means by which you communicated with Ally McCabe?
From what I remember, yeah.
And were there other means by which you would typically communicate with her?
If she wasn't answering a text, I'd give her a call. Yeah.
And were there apps or anything like that on your phone that you would communicate with her as well?
Snapchat sometimes.
Now, with respect to Snapchat and your family, specifically your cousins, what, if any, sort of group Snapchat chains were there with respect to your family?
Yes.
And specifically, who were those sort of group Snapchat chains? Who was included within it?
I have a Snapchat group chat with my cousins.
And you have cousins on basically your father's side and your mother's side, correct?
Not on my mother's side, no.
You have no cousins on your mother's side?
No.
And with respect to the cousins on your father's side, would it be all of your cousins that were included within that?
Not all of them, no.
And so who of your cousins would be included on those kind of group Snapchat chains?
My older brother, Chris, my younger brother, Dylan, my cousin, Kevin, Brian, Brendan, Caitlin, Kayla, and I believe that is it.
And if you recall, was there any communication on that group Snapchat chain in regard to Brian Jr.'s birthday on that date of January 28th or 29th?
No, not that I remember.
Now, with respect, so you reach out to Ms. McCabe via text, is that correct?
Yes.
And she agrees to pick you up?
Yes.
And at some point, are you made aware that she's at the home?
Yes.
And how is it that she makes you aware that she's at the home?
I got a text message from her that says I'm here.
And at any point in time while you were in the home, did Ms. McCabe come inside the home?
No.
And so after you received that text message from Ms. McCabe, did you respond?
Yes.
And do you recall what you responded?
Come in.
And from that communication, after you sent that, about how long was it between the time that you sent that and the time that you came out?
Between 30 seconds and a minute, I'd say.
And when you came out of the house, do you recall which door you came out at that point?
The side door next to the garage.
And when you came out that door, who, if anyone, did you encounter as you were coming out?
As I was walking out, I saw my Uncle Brian and my Aunt Nicole.
And you were going out, and what were they doing?
They were coming in.
And in addition to your Uncle Brian and your Aunt Nicole, was there anybody else that you recall that was with them when they came into the house?
No, not that I remember.
And what, if any, exchange did you have with your uncle and your aunt as you were going out and they were coming?
I just said, I'm going home. My mom wants me home. I love you guys. Bye.
And you then went outside of the house, is that correct?
Correct.
And did you see Ms. McCabe outside?
Yes.
And where was she where was her vehicle in relation to the house?
In the driveway.
Now, do you recall what type of vehicle Ms. McCabe was driving on that particular night or had at that time?
I believe it was the blue Ford that they had.
And was that a sedan? Was that an SUV? What type of vehicle?
A sedan.
And so you come out, that's in the driveway, correct?
Correct.
Do you recall whether or not it was parked on the left side or the right side of the driveway?
I do not remember.
And you get into the vehicle. Which part of the vehicle did you get into?
That I do not remember.
Front seat passenger side, does that sound right?
Could have been that, yeah.
Do you recall whether or not there was anybody else in the vehicle at the time that you got in?
I do not remember that.
Do you recall whether or not there was anybody else in the vehicle at the time that she had dropped you off at that location?
I do not remember that either.
Now, as far as the coming outside of the house, did you take note of anything as far as the weather or what was going on with that when you came outside?
Pretty sure it just started snowing at that time, around that time.
So the snow had just begun. Do you recall whether or not it was sticking or accumulating on the ground at that time?
I do not remember, no.
Now, you get into the car and where did you go?
She drove me right home.
So no stops along the way, just straight from Fairview to your house.
Correct.
And about how long a period or how long a drive is?
Anywhere between 5-10 minutes.
Now, as you were outside of the house walking to the car and after the car sort of backs out of the driveway and leaves, did you observe anything abnormal or unusual outside of your uncle's house that night?
No,
Did you observe any other cars outside at that time?
not that I remember.
Now, Allie has a mother and a father, and you're familiar with them, is that correct?
Correct.
And what are their names?
Jennifer and Matt.
Same last name as McCabe.
Yes.
And are you familiar with what types of vehicles they have?
Yes.
And when you came out of the house and got into Allie's Ford sedan, did you see any vehicle you would associate with either Jennifer or Matthew McCabe at the house at that time?
No.
And so you drive home and you go to your house without the address. Whereabouts within the town of Canton were you living at that point?
It's right in the center of Canton near the Seasons gas station.
And is that a single-family house or a multi-family house, or what is
It is a condominium.
it? And when Mr. K pulls in and parks, you get out, correct?
Yes.
And so in order to get into the building, in order to get into your home, how is it that you get into your home when you get to the condo?
There's a door around back that I go into, and I gotta either have a key or they buzz me in, but I usually have a key, and I gotta go up 3 flights of stairs, and then we're at the top level in the condominium.
And so you have to get sort of into the building before you can get into your own unit.
Correct.
And did you notice whether or not Ms. McCabe was still there as you were, excuse me. Did you notice whether or not Ms. McCabe was still out there parked when you opened the door with the key?
That I do not remember.
And you get into the condo, or you get into your home, and who, if anyone, was living with you at that time?
My parents and my little brother
Your older brother, where was he?
in San Diego.
He was in the service, is that correct?
Correct.
And as far as your brother, your little brother, and your father and your mother, were they home when you got home?
Yes,
And how do you know?
because I remember my parents being up in their bedroom that night.
Is there any sort of rule or sort of, for lack of a better term, like protocol as far as when you come home, where do you go sort of first thing when you walk in?
I always tell my mom and my dad that I'm home, and usually go up to their bedroom, give them a hug goodnight, tell them I love them, and then go down to bed.
And did you do that on that occasion?
Yes.
So sort of immediately when you come home, you go right up to your parents' room?
Yes.
And when you got up to your parents' room on that particular evening, was both your mother and your father in their room?
Correct.
Kind of exchange that you described before?
Yes.
And so your bedroom is then located downstairs from where your parents' bedroom is?
Yes.
And if you know about what time was it that you came into the house?
I want to say around 12:20.
And fair to say this is 2.5 years ago and you weren't exactly looking at your watch when you came in, is that right?
Exactly. Yes.
And as far as being home or having that curfew around midnight or so, did you get in trouble for being late that night?
No.
Objection. I'll sustain the objection. I strike that.
Now, Mr. Albert, the place that you were living at that point in the condo, how long had you been living
That I do not remember.
there? Did you live somewhere else in Canton prior to?
Yes.
Where was it that you lived?
7 Meadows Ave.
And how long did you live at 7 Meadows?
My whole entire life before moving to that condo.
And so all I'm sort of trying to ascertain here is, so from the time of January 28, 29, 2022, was it a long time, short time, months, weeks, years? How long had you been living at the condo?
Short time, I'd say a couple months.
And so prior to that couple of months, you had lived your whole life at 7 Meadows, correct?
Correct.
And that was a single-family house, is that correct?
Yes.
And with respect to living on Meadows Ave, did you know people that lived on your street growing up?
Yes.
And at some point, while you were living there, did you come to know someone by the name of John O'Keefe?
Yes.
And how did you know Mr. O'Keefe?
He lived at the top of our street.
So how many houses, if you know, were sort of in between your house and Mr. O'Keefe's?
2.
And do you know how long that Mr. O'Keefe had been living on that street?
I do not know.
And how did you know him, sort of, if you could describe sort of your relationship with your neighbor, Mr. O'Keefe?
I knew him because I knew that my parents were friendly with him. So and I knew he lived at the top of our street. That's how I knew him.
And were you aware who, if anyone, lived at the house with Mr. O'Keefe?
I know his 2 kids that he brought in, adopted, lived there, and I'm not sure who else.
And that would have been his niece and his nephew that he adopted, correct?
Correct.
Where were they in relation to you as far as age?
A lot younger. I don't know the exact age difference, but
So you were in high school, they would have been some grade far below.
yes.
Now, as far as your relationship with Mr. O'Keefe, your neighbor, about how often would it be that you would see him?
Not often. I drive by every now and then. He'd be outside and I would wave. He'd wave back. That was pretty much it.
And during the time that you lived on Meadows Ave, or a couple months subsequent to that, was there ever any animosity or any sort of arguments or anything that you would ever had with Mr. O'Keefe?
Never.
And how would you describe Mr. O'Keefe from your perspective, as far as how would you describe him as a person?
A nice guy, a good guy.
Now, with respect to, if I could bring you back to Fairview Road on January 28th and 29th of 2022. Obviously, you were familiar with Mr. O'Keefe at that point.
Yes.
And at any point in time that you were in that home, did you see Mr. O'Keefe inside the home?
No.
At any point in time that you were outside of the home, going in, coming out, at any point in time did you see Mr. O'Keefe?
No.
At any point in time in the evening of January 28th into January 29th, 2022, did you see Mr. O'Keefe anywhere?
No.
And at that time, at end of January 2022, were you aware of, or did you know anybody by the name of Karen?
Yes.
And how did you know?
I knew that she dated Mr. O'Keefe.
And had you had any sort of prior interactions with Miss Reed prior to January 28th?
Not that I remember, no.
Did you know what she looked like?
Not really.
As far as any interactions, would that be just sort of driving by the house?
Yeah. Maybe drive by, wave. That was about it.
I may have one moment.
Yes.
Now, as far as that sort of reaching out to Ms. McCabe on that particular evening, was that something that you had done before?
Yeah.
Is that something that sort of you and your friend group did together, as far as if somebody was out and driving around and somebody else was maybe drinking somewhere, they could contact them for a ride?
Yes, correct.
That was as opposed to somebody drinking and then getting behind the wheel and driving, correct?
Exactly.
Now, sir, at some point in July of 2023, did you have occasion to meet with any troopers from the state police in regard to that evening of January 28th to 29th?
Say the date again.
Some point in July of 2023, did you meet with any troopers from the state police?
No.
At some point subsequent to that date of January 28th, 29th, did you meet with any troopers from the state police?
Yes.
And you were asked questions and you answered them, is that correct?
Correct.
And following that conversation or interview that you had with troopers from the state police, what, if anything, did you provide them with reference to your phone?
Can you rephrase that? Sorry.
At some point, did you provide them with a screenshot of a text communication between yourself and Ms. McCabe?
Yes.
And was that something that you took a screenshot on your own phone and then were able to then provide it to them?
Correct.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
So showing you the document, just ask you to look up, look at it and then look up when you're finished. And do you recognize that, sir?
Yes.
What do you recognize that?
My text messages between Allie that night.
And what's contained on that, is that a fair and accurate portrayal of what you recall as far as the text messages, or what was on your phone as far as what you took a screenshot of the text messages between you and Allie McCabe that night?
Yes, sir.
I approach again, Your Honor? Yes. I'm to seek to introduce in a minute.
Mr. Jackson? Sure.
No objection. Thank you.
All right. And jurors, remember the instruction I gave you about the text messages. Thank you. Okay.
Your Honor, may I approach this to return to the
Yes.
witness? Your Honor, with the court's permission, may I publish this for the jury?
Okay.
Sir, what's up on the screen, is that what you have before you as Exhibit 84?
Yes.
And the contact that's listed at the top states out, is that correct?
Correct.
Is that how you had Ms. McCabe programmed into your phone?
Correct.
And from this, there's two sets of communications, one contained in blue bubbles and one contained in non-blue bubbles, correct?
Yes.
If you know the blue bubbles, is that you or is that Ms. McCabe or who's?
That's me.
So the other side would be Ms. McCabe, is that correct?
Correct.
There's also times that are stamped or associated with these text bubbles and with the text communications from Ms. McCabe.
Yes.
And if I could direct your attention, and maybe easier if you're looking at the paper in front of you, but just sort of starting from the top, January 28, 2022, if you could read for the jury what the content is, what the time is, and indicate who is communicating.
At 11:54, I texted Allie and said, "You can get me now, period." At 11:54, I texted her again and said, "If easier." At 11:55, Allie texted me back and said, "Okay, I am driving people home now." At 11:55, I said, "Word." And then at 11:55, I said, "Get me after." At 11:55, Allie wrote back, "KK." And then at 12:10 a.m., Allie wrote, "Here." And at 12:10 a.m., I wrote back, "Okay."
Ms. Gilman, you can take that. And Your Honor, may I approach this to retrieve the exhibit?
Yes.
Now, sir, with respect to that last communication that you sent as far as okay, how long after that message was sent did you then go out to the car where Allie was?
Right after, I'd say around 30 seconds.
And Your Honor, may I approach the witness again?
Yes.
Sir, I'm showing you what's been marked as exhibits 82 and 83. Again, I just asked you to take a look at those and look up when you're. And do you recognize those, sir?
Yep.
And what do you recognize those?
Say that again.
What is in those photos?
A picture of me and my aunt, and a picture of me by myself.
And do you recall sort of when those photographs were taken?
Yes, February 11th.
And why is it that you recall that, well, let me ask you this. As far as February 11th was concerned, where were you that evening?
I was at my uncle's house.
And why were you at your uncle's house on that?
My cousin was coming home for leave from the Marine Corps, so we had a little gathering for him.
And just to be clear, when you say your uncle, you're talking about your uncle Brian Albert again?
Correct.
Your cousin that was coming home from the Marines, what's his name?
Jack Albert.
And so on that evening, you were over that house, is that correct?
Correct.
And the first picture in exhibit, I believe it's 82, is that correct? You and your aunt Nicole?
Correct.
And what's contained on there, is that a fair and accurate portrayal of sort of what you looked like as far as your arms, your hands, your face, all of those things on that date of February 11th?
Correct.
And the second photograph is again you by yourself, is that correct?
Correct.
And from that photograph, again, is that a fair and accurate portrayal of what you looked like on February 11th?
Yes.
And from the second photograph in, if you know, where was that taken within the home of your uncle?
In the library at 34 Fairview.
And again, that library or any of the other rooms within the house beyond the kitchen, the dining room, or possibly the restroom, did you go into any other areas of the house on that night of January 28th into January 29th?
No.
Can I approach this to retrieve your honor?
Yes.
One moment, Your Honor.
Okay.
Now, Mr. Albert, just one last question. When it came to your arrival at 34 Fairview Road on the evening of, or the early morning of January 29th, when you were leaving, beyond your Uncle Brian and your Aunt Nicole, did you see anybody else older than yourself or anybody else related to that group come into the house that evening?
No.
Thank you, sir. I have nothing further.
Mr. Jackson, do you want to begin or wait until the morning?
Your Honor, it probably makes more sense to wait till tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Albert, I'm going to wait until the jurors leave, and then you can follow them.
Okay.
All right, jurors, I do have to caution you, please do not discuss this case with anyone. Do not do any independent
please.
research or investigation into the case. If you happen to see, hear, or read anything about the case, please disregard it and let us know. Tomorrow's a half day. We'll see you tomorrow morning.
Court, all rise. Please be seated. Court's back in session.
All right. Do you need me for anything? Any evidentiary issues, any exhibits that we need to go through to avoid sidebar time tomorrow?
Not for the Commonwealth, Your Honor. No.
Not on behalf of Mr. Reed.
Okay. We will start at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Yes, sure.
Okay. All right. Thank you all.
Court, all rise.
Goodbye.
All right, guys. So Boots, Tani, Christy, Jane, I think 13th hour's in here. Dill's in here. I'm in here. Bob's in here. Who am I missing? Fudge is in here. Okay, all of us. Okay, everybody in here. know this. We are not going to be covering. Can you hear me in there? Okay, we are not going to be covering the Karen Reed trial tomorrow because Bob and I are going to dedicate the rest of the evening as well as the beginning of tomorrow morning on a wicked video for you at 4:20 Eastern tomorrow afternoon. Hopefully all of you will remember to come and set your notification bells and share the link as soon as the thumbnail is available, which should be later this evening. There's Bob. And isn't he cute? And we will see you tomorrow at 4:20 p.m. Eastern. So please remember to set your notification bells and meet us back there, right here at Strange Suspicion. And we love you guys so much. Take care.